Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Today we're taking a look at the top 11 most influential comedians of 2023. Couple notes here. There are plenty of great comedians who are not on this list. For example, Shane Gillis, huge year, not on the list. Todd Barry, one of the best specials of the year, and I'll go over the best specials of the year tomorrow, not on the list. I'm also very, 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 very well aware, you don't have to shoot me a note, that this list is 11 men. And I spent some time thinking about it, and I'm like, well, who should be on this list? Amy Schumer? Maybe? I don't know. But as I do the list, I'll explain my reasoning. And as with all lists, it's all subjective. Your list will be different. The person next to you, their list will be different. I'm going to throw out some name. You're going to be outraged that I said, oh, I can't believe that person's on the list. That's how these lists go. So why is it 11? We're doing this to help promote a new podcast, which is called The Top 11. The Top 11 launches on January 11th. Each week, the Top 11 looks at the top 11 things for a single topic. Topic can be anything: iconic movie moments, mythical creatures, album covers, history, space facts, anything. The top 11. Whether you're a fan of 11s or simply somebody with a thirst for knowledge, tune into the top 11 on your preferred podcast platform. This week, we're taking episodes like this and putting them in the feed as a preview. And then on January 11th, the top 11 launches. All right, are you ready for my list? You're going to get mad. Number 11, most influential comedians of 2023, Pete Davidson. I hear you. Now, is he the best stand-up comedian? No, even Pete Davidson doesn't think he's the best stand-up comedian. But he's in the news all the time. He moves the headlines. Pete Davidson moves the downloads. Who's he dating? Is he in rehab? Why is he crashing into cars? Sometimes he even does comedy at a TV series called Bupkis. Remember that one? He's got a special coming out January 9th called Turbo Fonzarelli. He co-owns a ferry with Colin Jost for some reason. Pete Davidson. Fun to talk about. Always in the news. Number 10, Matt Rife. Matt Rife had quite the year. The buzz for 9/10 of the year was that Matt Rife was it. His problematic world tour went on sale. It broke the ticketing site. He sold out 100 dates. He was on top. Then he started doing some press for Rife Natural Selection, a special on Netflix. And then we all watched the special and we were like, oh wait, this special's not that funny. And then somebody had a problem with one of his jokes. And then Matt, instead of ignoring it, dug in, doubled down. Lost a lot of his fans. Then the haters came for Matt Rife and started digging out old tweets. Matt Rife was a lot more popular the day before that Netflix special came out. Matt Rife at number 10. Number 9, Bert Kreischer. Did you see The Machine? The Machine was fantastic, and that was the culmination of probably Bert's entire career up to this point. He got famous off the bit The Machine. Now it's a movie, and the movie was good. Bert also had a huge tour. He also has the very popular podcast he does with Tom Segura, Two Bears, One Cave. Bert riding high in 2023. Next up, number 8, Nate Briganti. Nate was named Comedian of the Year by Consequence of Sound, and Nate had a couple big things, including a fantastic special that's one of my favorites of the year, Hello World, on Amazon Prime way back in January. Nate also set the record for most tickets sold at the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. 19,365. He threw in one extra seat somewhere in a corner to set the record. He hosted the best Saturday Night Live in quite some time, and I think broke through to new fans. He also has his podcasting network and his own podcast, and he's shepherding comedians who are lesser known like Dusty Slay. So Nate's got a little power base going there. Good to see him coming up. A guy that went from nobody really knows who he is other than his fans to having a huge year, Theo Von. If you kept your eyes on the podcast charts all year, you noticed this past weekend went from being number 1 on the stand-up subgenre and then started showing up on the mainstream charts. I think Theo is primed for a huge 2024. He's a good storytelling. His pod is easy on the ears. Theo Von at number 7. Number 6, and in some ways it's weird that this guy is so low on the list because he is a kingmaker and a major influencer. It's Joe Rogan. Joe, obviously, host of the Joe Rogan Experience, a very, very, very influential podcast. You go on the Joe Rogan Experience and suddenly you've got a lot more fans. Comedians like Tim Dillon, who's fantastic, have seen that. There's speculation that Joe Rogan's deal with Spotify is up. Will they renew him? Will he stay with them? Will he go somewhere else? So we'll be keeping an eye on that in 2024. Joe also opened his club in Austin, the Comedy Mothership, which has basically turned Austin's comedy scene into the third coast behind New York and LA. Sorry, Chicago. You can send your letters to Johnny Mac. Some of the comedians have popped by there. Tim Dillon, Roseanne, Chappelle, Ron White has come out of retirement, I guess from hanging out Rogan and having fun. Whitney Cummings. The guys from Kill Tony have started doing their show at the Comedy Mothership. Number 6 is Joe Rogan. We'll take the break and we'll come back and we'll look at the top 5. This guy was already at the top of the business, and then he got slapped in the face. Yes, of course, Chris Rock, he's number 5. Almost every single article about a comedian somehow comes back to the slap, and we're a year and a half, 2 years out from that now. Chris Rock's name comes up with that, whether he wants to or not. And this year, he finally responded on stage during Chris Rock's Selective Outrage, his live special on Netflix. Then that garnered a whole bunch of reactions, and other comedians reacted to Chris Rock's reaction, and it's still a topic. But aside from that, if Chris Rock's behind a microphone, you want to hear what he has to say. Hopefully he does a lot more in 2024. At number 4, Kevin Hart. Billboard recently released that he was the top touring comedian of the year, making $67.5 million in ticket sales. He sold 631,000 tickets over 82 shows. That's a lot of money, and that doesn't include all the various endorsements he deals. If you watch football, he's always hawking a gambling thing. If you listen to this podcast, Kevin announces, 2 new projects a week. He's got his fast food chain. Netflix just did the documentary about Kevin and Chris Rock. So Kevin Hart at number 4. Next up, number 3, John Mulaney. And the press really is in John Mulaney's corner. Lot of good praise for John Mulaney, Baby J. I do not have that on my top specials of the year list, which I'll explain on tomorrow's podcast. Despite my personal opinion, 86% favorable on Rotten Tomatoes. It was Mulaney's return to the stage after some personal turmoil. We learned that Mulaney had a drug problem. He went to rehab. He had broken up with his wife. He's got a baby with Olivia Munn. Number 2, Dave Chappelle. Much like Chris Rock, almost every single interview with a comedian comes back to Dave Chappelle. Every move Dave Chappelle makes is news. He's got a new special out on Netflix on New Year's Eve, and if you host a podcast and it's early January, you're going to be very thankful that Dave Chappelle has a new special and will be stirring it up again. Dave Chappelle, number 2. And your number 1 most influential comedian for 2023, Jim Gaffigan. Jim is getting better and better at stand-up. He's right at the top of the mountain right now, has the respect of his fellow comedians. Additionally, he has the reputation for working clean, which broadens your audience. He's got his acting career going. He released Dark Pale, which showed Jim expanding his comedy styling, getting a little darker. That was very well received. He toured with Jerry Seinfeld. He had a great interview with Maron. Jim Gaffigan is number 1. If you hate my list, you can go on the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Podcast Group, and you can say, this list is terrible. That's okay. I'd love to hear your opinion. It's just a subjective list. Some names that I had down for consideration that I left off because you only get 11. Mark Maron, I really got back into his podcast this year. Really love his perspective on stand-up comedy as an art. I just like listening to the guy talk. Tom Segura, I have his partner in comedy, Bert Kreischer, on the list. Why don't you have Tom? I only had 11 spots, and I just felt like Bert had a slightly better year than Tom. Trevor Noah, aside from his awesome stand-up comedy, the void he has left on The Daily Show is tremendous. It's been a year plus, and they still haven't solved the chair issue. Trevor's recent special on Netflix is fantastic. Jerry Seinfeld not on the list, which is weird because he's probably the top comedian in the game. But Jerry just goes about his business, doing his thing, and goes home. And Conan O'Brien, wanted to have him on the list as well for his influential podcast. Eventually, Conan will come back to TV, right? He's been developing a show with Max, HBO, and Max, or whatever we're calling it this week, for years now. Is that ever going to air, Conan? But he gets some great guests on his very, very popular podcast. So Conan O'Brien will someday return to TV, and we'll be talking about him even more then. So that is the list of the top 11 most influential comedians of 2023. Back tomorrow with a look at the top 11 stand-up specials of 2023. If you enjoy this program, you can tell a friend about it. They might like it too, and you can all follow it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. See you back here tomorrow.